sheriff's deputy observed a vehicle racing through the streets of Jacksonville, Florida. The car was traveling at 90 miles per hour and ran through a red light on Atlantic Boulevard, its hazard lights flashing urgently. As the deputy followed the speeding vehicle onto University Avenue, a route leading to the hospital, he quickly pieced together that this wasn't a case of reckless driving, but rather an emergency situation unfolding before him. His instincts proved correct. When the vehicle finally pulled into the hospital's emergency entrance, the occupants revealed their desperate cargo. In the back seat lay 19-year-old Annia Wac, suffering from a single gunshot wound to her abdomen. The driver, identified only as Antonio, and his passenger, 20-year-old Mariah Clayton, would soon become central figures in an investigation that would expose the deadly consequences of mixing social media, firearms, and youthful recklessness. When first questioned by law enforcement, Antonio and Mariah spun a tale of Good Samaritan intervention. They claimed to have spotted Annia walking strangely along the sidewalk near Monument Road, hunched over and clearly in distress. According to their story, they stopped to help this apparent stranger, noticed she was bleeding, and rushed her to the hospital. It was a compelling narrative of random kindness, but one that quickly began to unravel under scrutiny. The officer's suspicions were immediately raised by several inconsistencies. Annia had no shoes, no phone, no ID, and no wallet, unusual circumstances for someone supposedly walking alone on the street. As investigators dug deeper, witnesses began painting a very different picture of the events leading up to the shooting. The reality was far removed from the Good Samaritan story. Annia hadn't been found wandering the streets at all. Instead, the shooting had occurred at the Novo Apartments off Kendalltown Boulevard, where a small gathering had been taking place. Witnesses revealed that Mariah and Annia had been filming a TikTok video in the bathroom of the apartment, using a real AR-style rifle as a prop, a decision that would prove fatal. The apartment belonged to someone identified as Gibson, who had been away in Orlando at the time of the incident. During a phone call with Gibson's sister, Mariah could reportedly be heard in the background repeatedly saying it was an accident, directly contradicting the story she had told police about finding Annia on the street. When confronted with the mounting evidence, Mariah's story began to shift. She admitted to being present during the shooting but introduced a new character into the narrative, someone she referred to as Jamaican. According to Mariah's revised account, while filming the TikTok video, this individual had attempted to show her how to handle the weapon properly. She claimed he stood behind her, manipulating the rifle's safety mechanism when it accidentally discharged, striking Annia. During the intense interrogation sessions, Mariah became increasingly emotional and defensive. At one point, she even volunteered to take a lie detector test, declaring, "Please sit the little thing on my arm. Do that, please. Do that." However, when detectives called her bluff and offered to arrange the test, she quickly backtracked, saying, "Why y'all got to do that? Why y'all not believing me?" The investigators found numerous inconsistencies in her account. The physics of her description seemed implausible. She claimed the Jamaican individual was shorter than her but somehow reached around to manipulate the rifle's safety while standing behind her. The detectives, familiar with firearms, noted that the positioning she described would make it extremely awkward, if not impossible, to simultaneously manipulate both the safety and trigger in the way she claimed. Moreover, when investigators interviewed other witnesses, including the person Mariah identified as Jamaican, their accounts contradicted her version of events. The individual explicitly stated, "That's not how it went down. I was not behind her. None of that what she's showing me is wrong. It's false." In the months following the shooting, investigators monitored Mariah's social media activity, building a stronger case against her. Despite the tragedy, she continued to post content featuring firearms, showing what prosecutors would later describe as a disturbing lack of awareness or remorse. These posts would become crucial evidence of her character and attitude toward firearms, ultimately influencing both the charges brought against her and her sentencing. During her final interview before arrest, Mariah's demeanor had shifted dramatically from her earlier emotional pleas. She appeared annoyed and combative, treating the investigation as an inconvenience rather than a serious matter involving the loss of a young life. When questioned about her continued association with firearms after the incident, she became defensive, claiming, "I don't hang around nobody who have guns, despite evidence to the contrary." Perhaps most troubling was Mariah's behavior in the months following the shooting. Between May and October 2023, while the investigation was ongoing, she continued to post social media content featuring firearms, showing a disturbing lack of awareness or remorse regarding the circumstances that had led to Annia's death. This pattern of behavior would later factor into the legal proceedings against her. On October 6, 2023, approximately 135 days after Annia Wac's death, Mariah Clayton was arrested and charged with manslaughter. The arrest came after her third interview with detectives, during which she remained combative and appeared inconvenienced by the questioning. Her attitude during this interview stood in stark contrast to the gravity of the situation and the pain experienced by Annia's family. On March 8, 2024, Mariah Clayton faced the consequences of her actions. After pleading guilty to manslaughter, she appeared before a judge who struggled to reconcile her behavior with the tragedy she had caused. The judge was particularly troubled by Mariah's continued social media posts featuring guns in the months following Annia's death, viewing it as a sign of immaturity and lack of genuine remorse. Addressing the court, the judge emphasized the erosion of community values through social media's glorification of weapons and drugs. They pointed out that while Mariah might maintain the shooting was accidental, the true root of the tragedy lay in the decision to treat firearms as props for social media entertainment. The sentence handed down reflected both the severity of the crime and the possibility of rehabilitation. Mariah received a split sentence of 5 years in prison, followed by 5 years of probation, with 154 days credited for time served. The terms of the sentence specified that any violation during the probationary period would subject her to the maximum penalty allowed by law. This case serves as a stark reminder of the deadly serious nature of firearms and the dangers of treating them as props for social media content. According to the Gun Violence Archive, by early 2024, there had already been 1.333 unintentional shootings in the United States. Each of these incidents represents a preventable tragedy, often born from a moment of carelessness or misplaced bravado. The death of Annia Wac highlights how the pursuit of social media fame can lead to fatal consequences when combined with dangerous props and poor judgment. It stands as a sobering warning about the real-world consequences of treating deadly weapons as toys, and the irreversible impact that a single moment of recklessness can have on multiple lives. In the end, no amount of likes, shares, or viral fame could justify the cost, a young life cut tragically short, a family left to grieve, and another young person facing years behind bars, all for a TikTok video that should never have been made.